So very good afternoon, dear students. So today we will continue our discussion on network functions. Yesterday we talked about various parameters related to network functions. We talked about pole zero plot. Okay, and we also saw how can we obtain pole zero plot, or how can we calculate poles and zeros if we are given with the network functions. So today we will move further. Yesterday I had talked about the significance of network functions and why at all we are trying to find out poles and zeros. And I told you that with the help of network functions, we will try to find out the stability of the network without actually realizing the circuit. So that thing also we will study in today's class. So let us move now. So yesterday we had discussed in detail about the concept of poles and zeros. I told you that poles are the roots of the denominator of the network function, and zeros are the roots of the numerator polynomial in S of your network function. Okay, so students, now in order to have a stable network, there are certain conditions for these poles and zeros, and these conditions obviously you'll have to memorize, and you'll have to keep in mind that when these conditions are fulfilled, only then your network is stable and realizable. So that way you will have to keep these conditions continuously in your mind. So I'll read out these conditions one by one and make you understand how to apply these conditions in the numericals that you will be coming across to find out the stability or the realizability of the network function. So first thing you should see here that these are the restrictions. Means the poles and zeros in your pole zero plot cannot be located anywhere. If they are located in certain region of the pole zero plot, in that case your network will not be stable. So we have imposed certain restrictions, or in a way condition, that will help us in determining the stability of the network. Okay, so there are restriction on the locations of poles and zeros. And another important point to note here is that we are talking about these restrictions or conditions with regard to driving point functions. You remember yesterday we talked about driving point impedance and driving point admittance. So these are the restrictions for driving point functions, driving point impedance and admittance. And another thing that we discussed yesterday, that was transfer function or transfer impedance or transfer admittance. So in the later slides we will talk about the conditions for transfer functions also. So there is minor variation in the two that you need to uh, notice and then act accordingly in the numericals. Okay, so let me read out. So the first condition is the coefficients of the polynomials as and bs of the network function hs must be real and positive. If you remember, yesterday we had defined our network function hs equals to as upon bs, and as was our numerator and bs was our denominator. So obviously as and bs are the polynomial in s. Okay, and we had seen the generalized equations yesterday, like b raised to power m, s raised to power m, and so on, similarly for bs. So the coefficient of those polynomials, you know what is the meaning of coefficient. Like we, if we write an equation, say as square, okay, then plus, say for example bs plus c. If we write a quadratic equation in s like this, then these a and b are called the coefficients of the polynomial in s. So uh, that way the coefficient of as and bs, they must be real and they must be positive. So means the value of a and b, that must be real and that must be positive. Like you cannot have minus sign here. If you have minus sign here, means your conditions are not fulfilled. Fine, this is condition or restriction number 1. Now come to second condition. Second condition is the poles and zeros, that is the roots of these polynomials, if they are complex or imaginary, they must occur in conjugate pairs. Okay. What does it mean? It means that, like, if you have a polynomial, say for example s square plus 2, if you find out the roots of this polynomial, the value of s will be plus minus under the root 2 j. Sorry, yeah, fine. So these will be the two roots, and you can see here that they are occurring in conjugate pairs. So this thing is okay. But if you write like this, for example, s plus 2j, in this case you have a complex root, but there is no conjugate pair. So this thing is not allowed. This thing is allowed. So this is your condition number 2, and similarly for zeros also. Then the third condition. The third condition is that the real part of all poles and zeros must be 0 or negative. What does it mean? Like, if you have a pole or 0 as a complex number, I told you that your complex number is represented in the form of sigma and j omega. So if you have s is equal to j omega, then sigma is the real part. So this real part must be negative. It must be negative or 0. It cannot be positive. Means the value of s cannot be 2 plus 3 j omega. It cannot be this. This thing is not allowed. But if you put like this, minus 2 plus 3 j omega, then this thing is allowed. Real part of all poles and zeros must be 0 or negative. This is your third condition. Fine. Okay. So next is condition number D. So for condition number D, the polynomials in AS and BS, they cannot have missing term between those of highest and lowest order values unless all even order or all order terms are missing. What does it mean? Like, if this is the polynomial in S, that is AS square plus BS plus C. Now you see here that you look at the powers of S. The powers of S, this is S square, then S1, and here the power of S is 0. So you have all the powers existing, starting from highest power is 2, then power of S is 1, then power of S is 0. All the powers are present. This is what it is mentioned, that there should not be have any missing term. Okay. So if you are starting with, say, let me take another polynomial. Say if you have a polynomial s raised to power 5, then say 4 s raised to power 4, then plus say 2 s cube, and then if you have say plus 5. So if you have such kind of polynomial, this thing is not allowed, because you have power 5, 4, 3, and 2 and 1 are missing. So this thing is not allowed. However, if you have all the even terms present or all the odd terms present, in that case, that polynomial is allowed. Means, like, if you have s raised to power 5, then if you have s raised to power 3, similarly, if you have say 5s, if that would have been the case, then say this 4 is not there. If you have s raised to power 5 plus 2s cube plus 5s, so you have power 5, then 4 was even, it is not there, then 3, then 2 is not there, then 1. If this is the case, this is allowed, because you have all the odd order terms present and evens are missing. Similarly, even may be present and odd may be missing. This is your fourth condition. Then fifth condition is that the degree of AS and BS may differ by 0 or 1 only. I told you what will be HS. HS is the ratio of AS to bs. Okay, so numerator is also a polynomial in S and denominator is also a polynomial in S. So what does it say? That the degree of AS, say the degree of AS is 5. How do we determine degree? Degree is the, you can say, power of the S, highest power of the polynomial in S. Say if it is starting with 5, so its degree is 5. Similarly, say the lower polynomial is starting with, say, S raised to power 4, for example. If this is the case, this thing is allowed. Okay, if the denominator would have started from S square, this thing is not allowed. Okay, or it could have been same. So either same or at the maximum difference of 1 only. Okay, it, that is condition number 5. Then last condition, the lowest degree in AS and BS may differ in degree by at the most 1. Okay, so here above it was the degree means the highest power. Here it is mentioned lowest degree means the lowest order coefficient. So there at the most can be a difference of 1 only. So these conditions will be more clear to you if you look at certain examples. So otherwise these conditions are very, very simple to understand. And students, presently you keep in mind that you have to memorize these conditions. Otherwise these conditions have been derived in a reverse manner, in a way that, like, if some system is unstable, for that unstable system we will find its network function. For that network function we will represent that network function in the form of pole zero plot. And then we found that their poles and zeros were located in such regions which told us that the system is unstable. So those restrictions were worked out and then they were presented here. I hope this thing is clear to everyone. Okay, students, now after looking at the conditions or the restrictions on the location of poles and zeros in the previous slide, now we have to check here whether the network functions that we have shown below, they are uh, suitable for representation or not. Okay, so here we will have to apply those conditions and determine whether our network is representable or not. So first have a look at network number 1. Just I'll give you a minute to think over it in your mind, uh, that what are the conditions which are not fulfilled here, and then I'll discuss. Yes, so I pause for a minute here and then I'll continue. So I hope you must have noticed the thing. Let us first take up the first network function. So if we look at in the numerator part, what is happening? We have s raised power 4. Okay, then we have s raised power 2. Then we do not have s raised power 3 term here. Okay, fine. Similarly, we do not have one term s. Fine. So that way these terms are missing. But in other words, if I say that, I can say that even terms are present, odd terms are missing. Fine. Now you look at the denominator. In the denominator part, if you look at one thing carefully, you see that this coefficient is negative. So it means the condition is not fulfilled. That is one thing. Any other thing you can notice here? I don't think so. In the denominator also, we have power 3 present, power 2, power 1, and power 0. All the terms are present. Fine. If we see the degree of numerator and denominator, the difference is 1 only, whereas the lowest degree is having the same value. So the main problem in this network function is that in the denominator, one of the coefficients is negative. Okay. And in the numerator, though the terms are missing, but those terms are all the odd terms, all the even terms are present in this numerator polynomial. So that way, that condition is satisfied. So this is how we check in the network function and apply those conditions for the uh, suitability of the network function for a given passive network. So now let us see the second network function. So if you look at this carefully, the first thing that we notice is we have one coefficient negative in the numerator. This is point number 1. Okay. Then second point. Second point, if you look at the numerator carefully, we have power 4, power 3, power 2. So some terms are missing. We must have s raised power 1 term here, and we must have a constant term here. So those two terms are missing because both even and odd terms are present here. Okay. Now let us see another discrepancy or the restrictions which is not followed here. That is, the degree of numerator is how much? 4. And what is the degree of denominator? It is 1. So that difference could be 1 only, but here that difference is 3. So that is another important thing that is missing here. Okay. So these are the points, some of the points that we could notice while observing the network function related to this passive network. So I hope all of you must have followed the concept of network functions, then the poles, the zeros, and then the locations of the poles and zeros, and the determination of the suitability of network function for representing a given passive network. Okay, now let us move forward. So these are the conditions for transfer functions. If you remember, transfer functions involved both input and output port, and we had talked about your voltage transfer ratio, current transfer ratio. They were called as transfer function. So similar conditions are there, but there is a small difference. If you read the conditions, you will be able to easily notice those difference. Okay. So I advise you to go through these conditions and try to find out the difference between both the restrictions as well as this necessary condition. So as I told you, transfer function is very, very important concept in any electric system. We represent our electric network with the help of its transfer function only. So our transfer function must exist, and for transfer function to exist or to be represented, or we must have that transfer function to satisfy certain conditions, and these are the conditions. So like the first condition is that the coefficient of the polynomial as and bs, they are to be real, as we talked about. Coefficient of bs must be positive, though the few coefficient of as may be negative. So what it is saying that we have hs is equal to as upon bs. So as was numerator, that gave us 0. Okay. And bs was denominator, that gave us pole. So in a way we can say that for as bs must be having positive coefficient. So the coefficients of bs must be positive, whereas some coefficient of AS could be negative. So that is one difference between earlier and this one. So we mainly focus on this part, pole part, in most of the conditions. So here also same thing. Another thing is the poles and zeros, if complex, they must be in conjugate. It is exactly same as we discussed earlier. Another thing is, see, the real part of the poles must be negative. Okay. And if real part is zero, then your pole must be simple. Simple means the power is 1, power of S is 1. Okay. Then we may have missing terms between the lowest and highest degree. Okay. So what does it say? That in case of AS, we in the numerator part, we may have some missing term, but in case of BS, there must not be any missing term. Okay, apart from all evens or all odds. So students, try to understand here the restrictions that we looked into in the previous slides. They are as it is applicable on BS, whereas these conditions are relaxed in some way for the numerator part for the transfer function. Try to understand that. Then the degree of AS, it may be 0 independent of the degree of BS. So this thing is also relaxed here. Okay. Then it is mentioned that for voltage or current transfer ratio, the maximum degree of AS must equal the degree of BS. So for specifically voltage and current transfer ratio, this condition has been again imposed. Okay. And then other transfer function is your transfer impedance and admittance. The maximum degree of AS must equal the degree of BS plus 1. So here uh, the difference can be of 1. Okay, the degree of AS must equal the degree of BS plus 1. It means that there has to be a maximum difference of 1. So these are the necessary conditions for your transfer functions. You can write the polynomials in the notebook from your side, and then try to check the necessary conditions for your transfer function. I hope all these conditions are clear. So students, after looking into necessary conditions for transfer function, we now move to very important criteria that will help us in determining the stability. From the very beginning of this class, I am talking about stability. So here comes that thing, that with the help of network function, by applying Routh-Hurwitz criteria, we can determine whether a system is stable or not. So this is one a kind of mathematical tool that will help us in determining the stability of given network. Okay, so there are certain steps for that. So for Routh-Hurwitz criteria, we have to develop such kind of array, which has been shown towards the left hand side of your slide. So how to proceed with that? So the first step is we have to construct array. I'll tell you how we have constructed the arrays. Okay, then we will construct the two rows. So means like, this is how we will construct an array. We will write the coefficients of the polynomial in the decreasing order like this, from the highest to lowest. Like if this is the polynomial which is given to us, so we will write s raised power m, m minus 1, m minus 2 up to s raised power 0. This is how we will arrange all our coefficients. Okay, without worrying about whether some coefficient is present or not, we will write from the highest degree till the lowest one. Okay, then after that, what we will do, we will start with first coefficient of the highest power of the polynomial. Okay, so the highest power is s raised power m, and its coefficient is b0. We will write b0 here. Means we will develop these two rows. First we have constructed an array, and then now we will develop these two rows. And how will we do that? We will write b0 here, b1 here, then b2 here, b3 here, b4 here, b5 here, and we will continue like this till we are exhausted with all the coefficients. It doesn't mean that you have to write the coefficient in front of these. No, in first two rows, you have to write all the coefficients alternately. Or in other words, I can say that in the first row, you will write the even numbered coefficients. And in the second row, you will write all the odd number coefficients. Even if coefficient is not existing, you will write 0 for that then. Okay. So here we have taken an example of m equal to 5. Okay. So if we have m equal to 5 and if we count 0 also, so there will be how many rows? There will be 6 rows, because we will start from s raised to power 5 and we will go up to s raised to power 0. So you have to go up to constant term. Keep this thing in mind. Okay. So this is how we have to develop the array, Routh array. We call it as Routh array. I'll take 2-3 examples also, so that you are able to understand how to apply Routh-Hurwitz criteria. You need not worry about that. First, try to concentrate uh, in this theory part. So let us now move forward. Now, what we have done, we have written the powers of s in decreasing order. We have written the coefficients in the first two rows. In the first row, we wrote even numbered coefficient, and in the second row, we wrote the odd number coefficients. Now, these values, your C1, C2, then your D1, D2, E1, F1, we have to calculate from these two rows. And how will we do that? There is a procedure. For calculating C1, you do not look at your right hand side of the slide. First, you look at the left hand side, where I'll tell you how you can easily obtain the coefficients, further coefficients. In order to find out C1, let me erase it and then I'll again clarify. In order to find out C1, what we need to do, we will start from here. We'll multiply B1 with B2. Okay, that is B1, B2. Then we will multiply B0 with B3. So in determinant, we start with the top term like B0, B3, but here uh, other way around. We start with B1. So B1 into B2 minus B0 into B3 divided by this one, B1. And we get whatever value we get, we write as C1 in the third row, first element. See, B1, B2 minus B0, B3, okay, divided by B1. This is how we calculate C1. Okay. Now, how do we obtain C2? For C2, we will take this B0, B1 always. We'll take B0, B1. Then we will skip this. We will take B0, B4, B5. Now, how will we obtain C2? So in order to obtain C2, now B1 will be multiplied with B4. B1, B4 into B0, B5. See, B1, B4 minus B0, B5 and again divided by B1 only. This is how we get C2. I hope this thing is clear. So from first two rows, we have obtained third row. That is your C1, C2. Now we need to find out D1. Okay, so let me erase and then it will be clear. Now our objective is to find D1. So in order to find out D1, obviously D1 will be calculated from upper two rows, like from these two. Okay, C1 was calculated from upper two, that is B0, B1. So for D1, this one. So how will we do that? C1, B3 minus B1, C2 divide by C1. This is D1. See, what is D1? C1, B3 minus B1, C2 divided by C1. So if you look at this graphical representation, it will be very, very easy for you to make it out. Otherwise, this mathematical representation may confuse you. Okay. Now we need to find out D2. How will we do that? For D2, again take this one. For D2, we will consider B1 C1, this one we will consider, this row we will skip, okay, and we will consider this one. Fine. So there is no term here, it means it is 0. So what do we do? How do we obtain D2? It is C1 B5, C C1 B5 minus B1 into 0, that is nothing but 0, so this term is gone, divided by C1. See, this is what we have. And what do we get? We get D2. And there is no further term, so that's why we do not have any D3. Okay. So once we are done it with that, now we need to calculate E1. So how do we do that? I think now you can yourself do it. Still, I'll tell you, in order to obtain E1, it will be D1 into C2, see D1 into C2 minus C1 into D2 minus C1 into D2 divided by D1. This is how we get E1. Clear? And then since there are no terms here, so there will be no E2. Okay. Now let us calculate F1. So in order to calculate F1, what we do, it will be E1 D2 minus D1 0. So that term will become 0. So E1 D2 divided by E1, that is your F1, which is nothing but your D2. Okay. So this is how we will develop our array and obtain the coefficients. This B0, B1, they were present beforehand, and these coefficients we have calculated from our sides. Okay. So this is how we will develop a Routh array, and then after doing this, we will determine whether it follows the stability criteria or not. So let us move forward. So according to Routh-Hurwitz criteria, the system is said to be stable. Mind this thing, if and only if and only if there are no changes in the signs of the first column of the array. So whatever coefficients you will be developing here in this array, that is B0, B1, C1, C1, D1, E1, F1, only this is the first row, sorry, first column. The coefficients in the first column, there should not be any sign change. Sign change means, like if this is say positive, if this is negative, and then all are positive, so there has been one sign change. Okay. If all are negative, for example, then no need to worry about, because there is no sign change. But if one of them is positive and all others are negative, then there is one sign change here. There could be more than one sign changes. So sign changes must not be there. Okay. So if we ensure this condition, in that case, we will get the roots which will have negative real parts, and which gives the condition of stability. Okay. In other words, let me tell you, if I try to make you understand in terms of pole zero plot that we talked about yesterday, this was our sigma axis, this was your j omega axis. Fine. So when we say negative real part, that means the roots, complex roots, must lie in the negative s plane. So this is your negative plane, na? Negative s plane. So your roots must lie in this plane. Only then we call our network as stable network. So if your roots are present in the positive half of s plane, then our system is unstable. And so here in negative it is stable, in positive half s plane it is unstable. So here stable, unstable. What will happen on the y-axis, which is in between? So here we say that our network is marginally stable. Marginally stable, because this is the boundary line. Okay, marginal. So stable, unstable, and on the j omega axis, it is your marginally stable. Fine. So I hope this thing is clear. So we will take one example now, then you will be able to understand clearly. Okay, let me explain this example and then I will take your doubts, if any, so that you can understand in a better way. So what we are being given, we are given a polynomial in S. Okay, yeah, let me tell you one more thing. In case of our network function, it was a ratio of two polynomials. One is AS, that was your numerator, and another was your BS, that was your denominator. If you remember, when we talked about the necessary conditions for transfer function, the maximum conditions, they were imposed on the uh, denominator part, that is your poles part. Okay, so the polynomial that we consider for checking the stability of the system, that is the denominator polynomial. That is the polynomial that gives us the poles value. Okay, so this thing you keep in mind. These things you will also read in the due course of time, also in other subject also, but for the time being you can assume this polynomial as the denominator polynomial. We also call this polynomial as characteristic equation. Okay, but you need not go into much detail at this stage. So this is the polynomial. So we have s raised power 4, s raised power 3, 2, 1, s raised power 0. So what we have done, we have written it like this. Then we put two lines like this. One is horizontal, another is this one. Okay, so what we do, we'll have to develop these rows, first row, second row. So we'll write these coefficients alternately. So the coefficient of S4 is 1. So we have written 1 here. Coefficient of S3 is 2. We have written 2 here. Coefficient of S2 is 4. So we have written 4 here. Alternately, like 1, 2, then 4 here. Then this 12 will come here. Then the last coefficient 10. This 10 will come here. Okay, so 1, 2, 4, 12, 10. We have got all the, you can say, coefficients. So we have developed the first two rows. Now what we have to do, we have to calculate, what was this? This was C1. So how can we do calculate this? We have to multiply this with this. So 4 to 8 minus this. 8 minus 12, that is minus 4. Minus 4 divided by 2, we get minus 2. This is what we get. Now we have to find out this one. In order to find this 2 has to be multiplied with 10. 2 10 ja 20. And this thing is 0. 20 by 2, how much? 10. We have got this. Now, how to find out this? In order to find out this value, what we need to multiply this. So minus 24. What is this? Minus 20. So this becomes minus 44. Minus 44 divided by minus 2, that gives us 22. Okay. And then if you multiply here, there is nothing but you get a 0 here. Now we need to find out this one. So for this, 22 into 10, 220 minus 0, that is 0. 220 divided by 22 is nothing but 10. So what we have done, or what we have obtained, we have obtained the first column of our Routh array. And now we have to see, is there any sign change? Yes, there is a sign change. So positive, positive, then negative, positive. So a sign change has taken place here. It means that the network which is being represented by this network function is not stable. It is unstable. This is how we determine the stability of a network function, or the network which is represented by network function, with the help of Routh-Hurwitz criteria. I hope each and every student has understood this concept of application of Routh-Hurwitz criteria for the purpose of stability. So students, with this, we have developed Routh-Hurwitz criteria of stability. We will look into one or two more examples in the next class. We will also talk about one more thing with the help of you can say network function that we can achieve, and we will try to finish off this topic in the next class. So I hope all of you have understood this. In case of any doubt, you can discuss with me in the next class. So thank you, students. We will continue in the next class.